Welcome back, everybody. The White House expressing confidence about Ben Bernanke's confirmation, but it is clear that Bernanke continues to face some opposition to his nomination to a second term. For more on this and the other many controversial topics that are being debated in Washington, we're joined right now by Congressman Ron Paul. Also, our guest co-host for the next hour and a half is Congressman Paul Kanjorski. He's the chairman of the Capital Markets Subcommittee. And gentlemen, good morning to both of you, and thank you for being here.
Good morning.
Good morning, Becky.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good to be with you.
Congressman Paul. Congressman Paul, why don't we start out talking a little bit about Bernanke? The White House is, at this point, expressing confidence that he will be renominated. Obviously, that vote goes through the Senate, but the House will have something to say, too, in terms of the regulations that they put forward. What do you think about his nomination process? You think it'll go through the Senate?
Oh, probably, but it might be just wishful thinking. You know, they have to sort of put a spin on there and try to build up some momentum, but I don't think they know for certainty. But it looks like he may well be appointed. But you know, I don't know whether that's the whole issue, because I think it's been tremendous that we in this country and in the Congress now have addressed the Federal Reserve for the first time in many, many years and saying, what responsibility does the Federal Reserve have in the creation of this bubble and the crisis that we have? And Bernanke is symbolic of course, the Fed. So I think this is great stuff. And besides, it puts more emphasis on us having more transparency of the Fed, because you know, the reason we're going to have a filibuster, or the potential filibuster in the Senate, is because we're going to hold until they have a vote. I mean, the people are only asking for a vote. We had the vote in the House, and and it's been passed, and we have 317 co-sponsors. In the Senate, the people who support this position, both left and right, are saying, why can't we have a vote? Because they know it's going to pass, because the American people want to know who the close friends are of the Federal Reserve, who they bail out, and what is going on. So I think this is tremendous, and I mean, I don't think Bernanke should be reappointed, but even if he is, he's wounded. The attention's on the Fed, the economy is going down, the bubble has not been, you know, the correction has not occurred. So the American people will pay a lot more attention to the Federal Reserve now than ever before, and I consider that very, very beneficial to all of us.
Congressman Kanjorski, what do you think the odds are that Ben Bernanke gets reappointed? And then talk a little bit about this legislation, what it might mean for the Fed.
Well, I sure do hope that they reappoint Mr. Bernanke. I had the occasion to work with him through the rescue period, and I found he was incredible. Now, that's not to say that everything he's done during his tenure at the Federal Reserve, both as chairman or as governor, was what we would have liked, but we never get 100% performance from anyone. I just think that he's extremely able. I think he's got an ability to take crisis and manage it well at the critical times. And I think the Fed has done a magnificent job. I have a lot of respect for Ron Paul, but his legislation, I voted against it. I would have continued to oppose it because I think it compromises the whole idea of a central independent banker. And we've seen a history of 175 years when you didn't have an independent banker and the constant crisis that we had. At least now, we haven't had a crisis for 75 years, and we're managing it. And when we needed good management, it was the chairman of the Federal Reserve that stepped forward and did a lot of the important things. That without that, the rescue would not have been accomplished. You know, I just heard a little tone in Ron's voice that he was almost happy that we haven't fully recovered. Don't be happy. This is the American economy. This is our economy. It doesn't belong to any one party. And if it belongs to any party, it belongs to the Republican Party. Mr. Bernanke was a Republican appointee. The crisis came out of the Republican administration. But I would hope we'd leave all that aside and recognize that we are in a recovery position now. Let's concentrating on getting that done. Let's not rock the ship. If we do, we could cause untold difficulty for the American people and for the markets and for the American economy. And I think that let's go easy and gingerly on this.
Congressman Paul, was there glee in your voice?
Well, I think he's overreacting. I think he's trying to play a little game there. But I do want to challenge one thing Paul did say, and that was there was no crisis since 1913. I mean, we've lost 98% of our value of our dollar against gold since 1913. We had the inflation for the World War I. We had a depression in 1921. We had inflation of the 1920s. We had a crash in 1929. I guess that wasn't a crisis. We had a 15-year depression due to the Federal Reserve. Then we had guns and butter in the 60s, and we financed that through the Federal Reserve. And then look at the 70s. If the 70s wasn't a crisis, what in thunder was it?
Ron, we've had 4 or 5 major wars, too.
Why should you use the Fed to finance a war?
Well,
you don't have a right to debase the currency just to fight a war. I've declared wars, too.
Don't you think your constituents are living a little better in Texas in 2010 than they were in 1932, 1950, 1975? Isn't the American economy meeting the needs for increasing the middle class?
What makes you think that had anything to do with the Fed? Maybe it was in spite of the Fed. Maybe there wouldn't be 17% unemployment right now if we didn't have the Fed, and we wouldn't have 27% unemployment in Michigan. So this whole idea that we're doing better,
17%
technology
and 27%, those are really inflated maximum.
No, the Fed. No, wait. No, the government.
You're counting underemployed.
No, Paul, you're not quoting the right figures. The Fed says the Treasury says it's 10%, but if you count everybody who quits looking for work, it's 17%, and free market economists, which are more reliable than the government economists, say it's 22%. To downplay the unemployment rate and say there's not a crisis and it's unrelated to the bubble that the Fed created. The problem is we're always looking at what caused the crash, and even this new Pecora Commission is looking at what caused the crash, and they never ask what caused the bubble. The bubble causes the crash, but nobody says, where do bubbles come from?
I think we had a couple of bubbles.
Come from the Federal Reserve creating too much money at interest rates of 0%, and there's nowhere for them to go today. Because right now, interest rates are 0, and if you have another downturn, what are they going to do? Make -3?
Well, I have this idea that rather than going back to the gold standard, I'd like to go to the diamond standard.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up because I want to go forward to a gold standard. I want to just prevent the Federal Reserve from stealing from people and taxing people by doubling the money supply. It is cruel and unusual punishment to the economy to allow a secret organization like the Federal Reserve inflate the currency, deliberately destroy values, destroy the people who save.
So your theory is have the Congress authorize the auditing of the Federal Reserve so the politicians in Congress can influence and affect and help decide what the Federal Reserve does.
No, you're misinterpreting the bill. You should read it because the bill says that the Congress has nothing to say about it for 6 months.
Now you
then they
know,
can look out.
Ron,
wait a minute. Let me finish. Then they can look at it. But what you're arguing is the case for, say, the SEC finds out something about a bad company. And then they say, well, this covered up because it might hurt that company. When the Fed knows something about a bank, you want secrecy because you say, well, it might hurt the company or the bank if people know this in trouble. So you want the Federal Reserve to cover up so that we don't know. They can spend money, hurt the taxpayers, destroy our currency, and give us a depression, and we're not allowed to know about it. There's no place in the Constitution that authorizes that kind of power.
Ron, I've been in Congress long enough, and so have you, and we've used the General Accounting Office to put pressure on federal agencies, both independent agencies and non-independent agencies.
Good.
And if we call for audits of an agency, that sends a message that here comes the Congress, we're going to take actions to curtail what you're doing. And that's what we're all worried
you're
about.
reading more into it because I wrote a prohibition into the bill for that. But besides, I mean, morally speaking, don't the people have a right to know what the Fed is doing, what kind of deals they make with foreign governments, foreign central banks, international financial organization, the private banks? We have a right to know. We have an obligation. We have a moral obligation. And besides, we're in this horrendous mess. It was the fault of the Federal Reserve, and to say, oh, the Fed is wonderful, let them create all the money, put Bernanke back in, he had nothing to do with it. I mean, the American people are way ahead of you on this one. The American people have awakened, I'll tell you that.
I was at a hearing the other day when your side proposed that it wasn't the Federal Reserve, it was the GSEs, government-sponsored enterprises that caused this thing. You got to pick a decision. Do you know what cost it?
Well,
I don't. That's why I voted for the commission to do the study.
The Federal Reserve causes the bubble, but you put kerosene on the fire by allocating credit and say you have to put money into a certain group. If the Fed creates money, we don't know where it's going to go, but because we say put it into housing, the housing bubble occurs. Put it into medicine, medical prices go up. Put it into education, education prices go up.
Wait a second, you think the Fed is responsible for higher education costs and higher costs for health care?
Yes, the Fed does. No, because the value of the dollar goes down, and you don't know where the money's going to go. But if you have a free market in distributing cell phones and computers, the market overwhelms the inflation. Prices actually go down. But the money is out there, has to be put into something. Quality does not go up. And this is why the cost of medicine goes up without the quality going up. Education, everybody gets a college education, but the quality of education goes down. And it's the fact that when you allocate credit, and if you do it in housing, it just